And once again, Hoosiers are seeing an Indiana Republican Party who is set to ignore the will of voters, more than 80% in this case, to fulfill a partisan strategy that's more reflective of the 1930s than this year, 2022. On behalf of the Indiana Democratic Party, I want to express our sorrow and sadness following the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. A 50-year American standard has been stripped away from women of all stripes, colors, and backgrounds. Generations of women, for the first time, will be forced to make dangerous decisions many of us thought we left in history books. And that horrifies me the most. Underprivileged women, especially black and brown, Hoosiers in urban communities, will see their futures dashed on their lives be put at risk because the nation's highest court backed a small minority over the large majority of Americans who want to keep living up to the foundations and freedoms of the United States. In Indiana, the days now numbered to get a safe and legal abortion. And what scares me the most is the fact that we have a state government who is ready to request that Governor Eric Holcomb call a special session and use taxpayer dollars just to ban this medical procedure in the state of Indiana. It is unclear how extreme the Indiana Republican Party will go, but politicians like U.S. Senator Todd Young and State Representative John Jacob have signed pledges that wish for the state to enact a total ban on abortions, even in the cases of rape, incest, or saving the life of the mother. Should the Republican supermajority go as extreme as many of us believe, they will be fulfilling a national extreme agenda that only 17% of Hoosiers support in this state. I'm turning the mic over to Indianapolis City County Councilor Allie Brown. Before representing Indianapolis, Allie was on the front lines defending a woman's right to safe and legal abortions. She also worked at the AIDS Task Force of Northeast Indiana, where conversations about medical freedoms were heard, bread, and butter. Simply put, Allie knows a thing or two about what could happen to Indiana should the Republican supermajority issue a total ban on abortions across the state of Indiana. You will now hear from Councilor Allie Brown.
Thank you, Mila. Before I start, I just want to say, if you can hear that my voice is shaking, it is not out of sadness or grief, it is out of righteous anger that they would take our rights away. It is not a politician's business to decide if a woman has the right to an abortion. That choice should be left to the pregnant person and their doctor. Republican politicians are infringing on a woman's privacy rights, and the partisanship is simply un-American. It must be said, abortions don't stop just because they are illegal. Banning abortions will no doubt lead to dangerous procedures or for women who cannot afford to travel for safe abortions in another state. Fact, more than 99% of abortions occurred before 14 weeks of pregnancy. Fact, 63.5% of abortions occurred from women who were already mothers. Fact, live births occurred 10 times more than abortions in Indiana. I'll say it again. Republicans are violating a woman's right to privacy if they wish to ban abortion. What happens between my doctor and me is my business, and it's not another politician's. The only politician that belongs in my waiting room, in my doctor's office, is me. And it's important This is something a lot of people can't comprehend until they have been pregnant. Pregnancy is complicated and it is difficult, and I stand up in front of you as a mom of a 5-year-old boy that I love more than anything in the world. A little boy I hope I get to watch grow up. I got pregnant with my son in difficult circumstances. To say that the pregnancy was easy, yeah, that's just how women hide how hard it is to be pregnant. When I went to the hospital to give birth, they started to induce labor, but during that process, my placenta ripped off the inside of my uterus, and they lost the heartbeat from my son. Within 5 minutes, I was rushed to rushed into an emergency room, leaving my husband terrified, standing in the hallway. As they strapped me down, and I had a unmedicated, unsedated C-section. The pain of having my stomach, my body cut open, was only dimmed by the fact that the last thing I heard before the anesthesiologist came into that room and put me under was that my child was blue and not breathing. I then lost consciousness and then stopped breathing myself. I had to be revived on that table with my inside still outside of my body while they also rushed to revive my child. I woke up 4 hours later screaming that I had killed my baby, overwhelmed with grief. My husband couldn't convince me that he was alive because that's what I had heard. Dylan is the light of my life, and I am so grateful to the doctors at Riley and at Methodist who saved his life and mine. But because of this pregnancy, I have learned that I have a condition where I cannot count on the placenta to stay attached. And what that means is no matter how much Dill asks for a brother and sister, I cannot get pregnant again because there's a good chance I could lose my life. I want to be a mom again. I want to give Dill that sibling, but I can't. But now I have to give Dill the best mom that can be here, and that's one that's alive. If I get pregnant, even using contraception, which I was using when I got pregnant with him in the first place, I will have to leave the state to seek an abortion. And I will, because my child deserves a mother who's alive. I will do that. But there are so many women who won't. And I want to know that I come back to the state that I love, a state where 83% of people support my access to abortion. Abortion in the case of incest, in case of life of the mother, in case of rape. People support that access. Knowing that I could come back and become a felon with what these bills that they've been filing, and I cannot tell other women of the struggles that I went through and what they need to know. So I want to ask the Republicans these questions. Do you really want to force women to carry their rapist's child to term? Do you want to force a girl to carry a rapist's child to term? Do they want to tell young girls who've been raped by a family member that their uncle's baby is more important than their life? Do they want to tell women who choose to be mothers, who desperately want more children, that their lives aren't worth anything? Republican politicians, particularly the men, should be careful about how they answer these questions. Because I know, and trust me, because I represent an area that has been represented by only Republicans before me, I know a lot of Republican women. And they are fully in support of a woman's right to choose. When 1 in 4 Hoosier women has had an abortion, that's not 1 in 4 Democratic women. That's all women. I know there are Republican women who do not want to go back to the days where families and children lost their mothers regardless of circumstance because they chose to have an abortion and it was dangerous. And lastly, my experience before serving on the council taught me one thing. Once abortion goes, so will our access to birth control and contraceptives. And they said as much in today's ruling. The Indiana Republicans' national agenda against abortion isn't about the procedure, but more about control over women. They want to regulate when and how a woman approaches her sexual freedoms, decisions that should be private. Republicans have repeatedly said in the past and in recent history, like in response to a mass shooting like at Uvalde, that they believe a woman's only value is to be a mother and look after their family. You can read the dissent. It says exactly that. If you don't believe me, you can look towards speeches from the recent NRA convention. Look at the words of GOP candidates for an office across the nation. They're all saying the quiet part out loud. Republican politicians are fighting a losing battle. Their values are un-American and do not reflect 2022 United States, Indiana, or here in Indianapolis. And you better believe folks like me will be on the front line doing everything we can to stop their insane national agenda. Thank you. I want to introduce someone who has inspired me and has kept me fighting even in my darkest days. I'd like to introduce Linda Lawson, who when her time at the Indiana General Assembly was not only a leader but the champion for women. And when she served as a police officer specialized in sex crimes and domestic violence and knows firsthand how this issue will affect people here. Linda.
Oh, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Allie for that personal story. It's one thing to come and talk to you about facts and things that you know about firsthand, but when things are this personal, it's very difficult to stand in front of strangers to kind of, make your soul open to the folks that are listening, and I hope that you all are. Yeah, I was in the General Assembly for 20 years and had a very, very heated argument, some of you might remember, with a Republican legislator who said the only reason that women would be seeking an abortion is because they lie about either being raped or molested. So we know that's not true. But my job as a legislator was to always speak out when it came to the rights of women, and especially their reproductive rights. They have the right to determine what happens with their body. What happened today was a crime. And it's a crime because lots of things are going to happen because of the result of their decision. I'm going to talk to you today about a situation that I had when I was working as a sex crimes investigator. And I'm not going to use any names. I'm not going to use any detailed information, but I will tell you that while I was on the Hammond School Board, I served as a member of the Hammond Police Department and knew very closely many of the teachers who worked in our public schools. I received a phone call one day from one of the teachers who said that she had a student that was a preteen who was pregnant. My first question to her was, "Did you talk to the parents?" And she said, "Well, I didn't, because she's pregnant by her father." And I said, "Okay, I'm coming right over. Call her mom." We had a long conversation in the office with the teacher, but eventually we went to the Hammond Police Department. My partner and I took statements from both the mother and the child. She was 12. Let that sink in. She was 12. And the mother told us where he worked, and my partner and I and our lieutenant went straight there. We arrested him, took him back to the Hammond Police Department, and he pled guilty, subsequently was sentenced to 14 years in prison. And I'm talking about an area of the state that is about 25 minutes from downtown Chicago. It's not what you would think when you think of incest and you think of raping your 12-year-old daughter. But this actually had started when she was 6 years old, when he was giving her baths. And finally, at 12, we had the result of that. It's happening all over the place. If you talk to social workers in the state of Indiana, you will find that the majority of young men and women who are molested by family members, and the result of that very, very often is what the situation is I've described to you. This law that just passed, or this change in Roe v. Wade in the state of Indiana, is going to make a remarkable and horrible change for the young women who live here in the state of Indiana. And it should not have anything to do with robed, unelected, pious people who are sitting in Washington, D.C., making decisions for the women that live in our country, including the women that live here in the state of Indiana. I can't even imagine what's going to happen on the 6th of July when the Indiana General Assembly goes back into session. But stand by, because I'm certain there will be things that come to the floor that will directly affect the lives of women in the state of Indiana. So I know that we have champions for women in the state of Indiana, and one is standing directly to my right. Prosecutor Mears, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud that you're here to represent the women in the state of Indiana. We need people like you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ryan Mears. I'm the Marion County prosecutor, and I thought it was important for us to be here to demonstrate our commitment to women and show support for women. And as many of you know, the woman's right to choose and that battle for a woman's right to choose didn't start in a doctor's office. It started in the prosecutor's office. Roe versus Wade, the Wade in that case was the Dallas County District Attorney, the Dallas County prosecutor. And that's where this litigation began. And unfortunately, we're back here again discussing this issue. The Marion County Prosecutor's Office inevitably will be drawn into this conversation by the Indiana legislature as they seek to criminalize women, doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals. And we want to send a very loud and strong and clear message to the community, and most importantly to women and to medical professionals, that we are going to focus our resources, our law enforcement resources, our prosecutor resources, to help make a difference in our community, to keep our community safe and continue to focus on violent crime. It should not be a priority of the prosecutor's office or law enforcement to second-guess the decisions and choices made by healthcare professionals. Everybody here realizes that we have a number of challenges in Marion County. One of those challenges is not incarcerating doctors and nurses. I think as we just came out of a pandemic, all of us learned the importance of our healthcare providers, the contribution that they make to our community, and to now criminalize them for healthcare decisions that they make with patients is not something that the Marion County Prosecutor's Office needs to be involved in. It's not something that law enforcement needs to be involved in. And I think it's important that we send that message here today as we discuss what happened in Washington, D.C. With that, I'll turn it over to Mila.
Thank you, Councilwoman Allie Brown, Linda Lawson, and Prosecutor Mears. This is a sad day. This is a sad day for women and for America. And I look forward to taking this message across the state in the coming days. This is the first time in our nation's history that we've taken a step back in forming a more perfect union. And I am horrified about what other dominoes will fall now that women will lose their rights to the legal and safe procedure of having an abortion. As Councilor Brown stated, a woman's right to contraception and birth control will be the next issue up for debate. I also fear the Indiana Republican Party will continue their crusade of violating the privacy rights of Hoosiers, including the right to marry the one you love regardless of race or sexual orientation. I say this because the Indiana GOP has repeatedly shown us they believe a Hoosier's personal life should be subjected for approval by politicians and government. Not only are they wrong in what they say is un-American, but they contradict the values that they once claimed to have. The Indiana Democratic Party sides with the 83% of Hoosiers who believe access to abortions should be legal in some form. A woman, a young lady, a girl should have the right to choose not to have an abortion by a family member or by a rapist. We side with the belief that it's truly only a woman's right to choose. We also believe that a politician has no business being in a doctor's office with a woman and her doctor. Her health is her and her doctor's business. Indiana Democrats will fight tooth and nail every step of the way against this form of dangerous and extreme partisanship. We will show voters and families that the Indiana Republican Party is no longer the so-called conservative party of decades past, but an extreme one who prioritizes an un-American partisan agenda over creating a better future for families in all 92 counties. Thank you all for being here this afternoon for this very, very important decision that was made earlier today. And we will now take questions.
Okay, anyone questions?
Prosecutor Mears, you said that this is not something law enforcement needs to be involved with. Are you saying that you will not prosecute these cases?
Correct.
Berman.
Right, are there any circumstances where that answer is different, or is this a blanket no matter what?
No, we haven't seen the law yet, and we don't know what the law is ultimately going to look like and what criminal provisions are attached. I think the message that needs to be sent is this isn't where our resources need to be devoted, certainly the law enforcement resources as well as prosecutor resources.
You anticipated my next question. We don't know what, if anything, they will pass, whether it will be a ban, whether there will be exceptions, et cetera. How does that shape, and Mala, I include you in this as well, how does that shape your office's response and the political response?
Well, the Indiana Democratic Party's response is going to be that a woman should have the right to choose to have an abortion or not. Again, government and politicians should not be in the doctor's room when decisions are being made on behalf of someone that has either been raped or a woman that chooses to have an abortion.
I would just add to that we fear the worst because they tried it already. Liz Brown filed a bill that looks exactly like Texas, which makes it illegal not only to have an abortion at any stage, but also to talk about it, to help people get one, to go get one in another state. So we already know where they lie. We already know exactly what they believe. The question is, are they going to actually stand up and do that, or are they going to listen to the 83% of Hoosiers who believe in access to abortion? That is a woman's right. 83%. And I'm going to remind all of them who are listening, you're up for election in November. Women vote, and we're going to vote you out. We're going to take back our state house. Because how dare you?
Amelia?
Prosecutor, as you know, you're a little bit curtailed by what you can do in the legislature. There's been past attempts, I think, targeting you regarding marijuana and not prosecuting that. So, how would you address any preemptive bills then that come down through the state house? I mean, you're really limited in what you can actually do. Can you pass a bill that limits your ability to not prosecute?
Well, I think the challenge that they've had before with those bills is there's significant questions as to whether or not those are even constitutional, and would they pass constitutional muster, should they pass those, and they have not figured out a constitutional framework that would allow for some of those bills to pass, and so they're already treading on thin constitutional ground as you're talking about the abortion issue, adding the additional layer of state constitutional questions about prosecutors exercising their discretion, I think just throws those laws into even more question. And so I think one of the reasons it hasn't passed is not because they think it's a bad idea, it's just because I don't think they figured out a legal way to do it.
Others? Richard? All right. Berman again? Yeah.
Got a second bite of the apple. Mila, on the political end of this, how do you see this affecting the elections in November? We keep putting that 83% figure. This isn't the only issue that voters base their votes on. How do you expect this to move the needle?
As Councilwoman Alley just said, that we're going to hold them accountable, and we've got to vote. And they need to remember that they are on the ballot next year. And anyone that supports that a woman should not have the right to choose if they want to have an abortion or not, we're going to take them out of their office, their seat.
I'm asking you to put on your fortune teller's hat, though. That's the party's position. What are the party's prospects that it actually works out that way in November?
Well, we're hopeful that, again, we're going to turn out the vote. And I'm going to defer to Councilwoman Alley because she has seen the bill, and I have not actually read the bill, if you would like to add any comment to that.
So not only is there going to be women who are outraged by this, and all of our male partners should be outraged by this too, because we do not get pregnant alone, but all of the LGBT community, because in there, Clarence Thomas said that this means that Obergefell will fall, this means Griswold will fall, which is our access to birth control at every kind, contraception of every kind. This affects more than 51% of people in the state. Women are angry, and you know, I was elected in a year that we swept Indianapolis because people were angry about Trump. And there's far more people who are going to be angry about this.
Last question, anyone?
Do you fear just this general, and this might be a question for the prosecutor again, this general pushback is going to really spark the ire of the legislature and they'll do something in this upcoming session? Or, you know, because there's always frequently bills that target Indianapolis, so, you know, how are you going to tread that ground?
I think it's important for us to stand up for what's right and what we believe in. And we believe in standing up for a woman's right to choose, and we believe in standing up to support women. And I don't think there's anything wrong with standing up and expressing those views. We're hopeful that there's a healthy conversation about these issues. We're also very aware of the math as it relates to the State House, but you know, I think it's important for us not to be reactive. We need to be proactive when we have these conversations. They're not going to agree with everything we do here in Marion County. We don't agree with everything they do at the State House. But it's important for us to stand up for the people that we are here to serve and who we're here to support.
Cool. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it. And side one-on-ones. Dustin, I know you want to talk to Mila. Richard, you want to talk to him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to need anyone? Do you need anyone?
Yeah,
Sounds good. Okay.
I'm wondering if we can talk to the prosecutor.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll set that up. Let's have 1 second.